Okay, kiddos. So today, this week, we're doing linear inequalities. Okay, so let's start with what we've talked about in class about the main things we need to remember when we're talking about linear inequalities. So, a lot of times you'll see it as y equals mx plus b as a linear equation, right? And then sometimes we'll see it as in the form of ax plus by equals c. Okay, so the main thing is that on this one that you have y by itself, and this when you have x and y on the same side. So you have to look at where the total is, okay, and what you have going on. All right, so let's talk about this first one, which is going to be at least first two examples. So let's talk about what y equals mx plus b equal means. All right, so the first thing is y. Okay, so y is going to be always the total, okay, and that's the one that we see by itself. Okay, so that should make sense. Then we have m, x, and b. All right, so m represents, remember, the slope. Okay, and these are key words you can see for slope: each, every, or per. Okay, when you see that stuff in front of a variable, then you know that's the slope. Okay, so then we have the b value, which the b value is our, okay, so that's slope, that's our total. Okay, the b value is going to be our y-intercept. Okay, so the y-intercept, okay, the keywords for that one you might see starting amounts, or you might see initial amounts, or initial value. Okay, so anytime you see those keywords, then you know where to put that. Okay, and then the main thing that we talked about, especially, we see that variable. Okay, so when they talk about a variable that we're going to use, that's going to be the hint that what goes over there. Okay, as far as our variable. Okay, so if we just think about those things as we're setting it up, then you will be able to better decipher this if we're just going to write it down or eliminate the wrong answers. All right, so let's keep that in mind as we go forward. Okay, so what do we know about these symbols then? Okay, so these symbols, and that's what we're talking about right over here. That's going to make a difference on the difference between an equation and an inequality. So we set it up exactly the same. Only thing is we decide on which one of these are. So they point to the left or they point to the right like that. So here's what we're going to remember. Okay, so if it goes to the left, that's going to be less than. Okay, if it goes to the right, that's going to be greater than. Okay, if it goes to the left and has a line underneath it, it's called less than or equal to. Okay, so it could be either one. Okay, and then if it goes to the right and has a line underneath it, okay, as we may have remember, or you may think, it's going to be more than or equal to. So especially on these, you have to remember it could be or, could be equal to it. Okay, so either one, not necessarily greater than or less than. Okay, so some of the keywords then, especially when we're seeing, and that's what they really want us to check on with the equal than or equal to. Okay, so here's some keywords for those. Okay, so main keyword would be for more than would be at least. At least. Okay, or you might hear simply more than. Right, so all right, so then for less than or equal to, all right, some keywords that you might hear are at most or maximum. All right, so keep that in mind as we go through these two problems. All right, so you might want to just try this first by yourself and then see if you get it correct. And then you can skip this video if you don't need to or if it's not helpful to you, but let's go and go through it as if you needed it. All right, so it says a rental car company charges this much per day. Okay, where you see that per comes into mind, and 0.05 for every mile driven. Okay, she wants to rent a car, knowing that she plans to drive 50 miles, and she has at most, okay, that's keywords, at most $510 to spend. So we're going to circle or highlight any of the key math information. So which inequality, so which one of these choices can be used to determine x, which is the maximum number of days? So that tells us what that variable is. Okay, so how much can she afford to rent? Okay, so remember we said the y, that's what I would look at first. The y value tells us what the total is. Right, so we see what the total is. She says the total is 510. So we can see over here if that's by itself. And actually on all four of these, it is by itself. Okay, so that's good. So we're going to check that first. Now we want to see if we can see which one is the slope and which one is the y-intercept. Okay, so if we see it, we know the variable, it says it's x, so we know the slope is the one in front of the x, right? So let's look at these, the slope that's in front of the x, which is the number of days, so 2588 per day. So we know that per is slope, so we need to have that 2588 and the x. So let's look at that. So 2588 and the x. This one does not have the x with it, right? That we know that one's wrong. All right, this one 2588 does not have the x. That one's wrong. Okay, so now we can see between these two, right? Both of these have 2588 in the x plus a 2.25. So it's the symbol that's correct. Okay, so this says at most 510. So at most means less than or equal to, right? You can't go higher than that. So it points to the left. So it's going to it's going to be pointing away if we have the 510 on the right side, so it points to the left side if the 510 is on the right. So less than. So this first one is set up differently, but we can see what's happening with the arrow. This one's pointing at the 510. We said it needs to point the other way. So now this other one, even though it's set up weirdly differently, we can see it's not pointed at the 510. So that's why that one is our correct answer. Okay. All right. So now let's go and do this next one. See if you can pause the video. See if you can get this one on your own. Type your answer and see if it's correct. Okay, hopefully you tried that one. Let's look through this. All right, so circle or highlight the important math information as we go through it. It says a group of friends wants to go to amusement park. They have no more than $420 to spend. Okay, and so we're going to highlight that 420 and the no more. Okay, on spend on parking and admission. Okay, so parking is 875. Okay, that's good math information. Okay, tickets cost 25.75 per person. Okay, so we see that per. That's a very important term math information for this as well that we talked about. So which one can be used to determine x, which is the maximum number of people? Okay, so it tells us right there what our variable is. Right? We said that x is the maximum number of people. Okay, so we know the slope needs to go in front of that letter. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this one. All right, so we said X is the maximum number of people, so we have parking, and then we have tickets per person. So we know that per tells the slope, so that one needs to go in front of the X, so 2575X. All right, so eliminate the answers that don't have 2575X. This one doesn't, so we know that's incorrect. Okay, what else? That one has it. This one doesn't, so we know that's incorrect. Okay, so now we've eliminated two answer choices. So if we had to guess, then we can guess multiple choice, right? But we don't need to do that. Let's look at the difference. The only thing are these symbols right over here. So remember that key word, no more than, right? So no more than. You ask yourselves, can be more, or is less okay, or is more okay? It says no more, so more can't be okay. So less than or equal to 420. Right, so that means if we write it down, I think it's important to write it down. So we see that, then it's pointing away from the 420. So that's what we can look at, because some of these are, we see these are set up differently. So away from the 420, that one's pointing towards it. That one's pointing away from the 420. So that's why that's the correct answer. All right, so that's what we want to keep in mind on these, is just thinking about what those key words mean, okay, and then how we can set it up. We think y equals mx plus b, or ax plus by equals c. So let's look at this second page for that. Okay, so on the second page, these are more commonly what you're going to see, but it's going to be ax plus by instead of equal to c. Remember, we're going to choose that inequality symbol. Okay, so on this one, remember the one that by itself now is going to be our total. Okay, so especially if we set it up first, where we know that our total is on the right side, then we can just think, okay, what inequality needs to go right over here in the middle. Okay, so go ahead and do those, and as soon as you have a question, just let me know.